Here is a conversation between God and Jesus early this morning that you may have missed. Whoops. Well, yeah, welcome to First Church. We go. Time to rise and shine. Just 10 more minutes, Dad. You resurrect this minute, young man. I don't know how many times I heard that. Well, we all know what the biggest news story was of the week, right? Notre Dame is burning, which was flipping in the slides. There was a moment when I understood the full significance of the Cathedral of Notre Dame. I've been there in all three stages of my spiritual life. I was there as an evangelical fundamentalist, and I remember thinking, well, ain't this just awful? This church is just a museum. Nobody shows up to worship here. Very judgmental. I went there as an atheist agnostic, and I said to myself, well, this is worthless. Why would you build this if there was no God? Kind of judgmental. Then I went there as a progressive liberal Christian. Well, I remember thinking to myself, all of the theology in this place was written by old white European men. Pretty judgmental. But the amazing thing about Notre Dame is that it makes you feel small. How many of you have been there? It gives you that sense of maybe the grandness of God or the grandness of the individuals that built this, and really their image of who they believed God to be. So this is kind of my name tag now after my many inventions of myself. I would say this is kind of my most current label. Does anybody know what that acronym is? Liberal, evangelical still, mystic, progressive, Christian humanist, inclusive pastor. So it's Lemp Chip. So after all those many visits to cathedrals and Notre Dame and places of the like, this is kind of where I've landed. So during the time that I was an agnostic atheist, and I waver between the two, my partner at the time, Garth, and I, we were standing in a field about 80 kilometers south of Paris, happened to be marching alongside a group of Muslim refugees. They were taking a part in the Easter pilgrimage to the Cathedral of Chartres, an ancient French tradition that dates way back before the cathedral was even built in 1193. Anybody been on that march? Arnie, you haven't? Shirley? I'm surprised. The pilgrimage, thousands of French citizens make this each year, and it begins at Notre Dame in Paris. But the strange thing is marching alongside 30 Muslim refugees as they are trekking from one grand symbol of French Catholicism to the other huge symbol of French Catholicism, marking Holy Week. I asked local French individuals who had participated in the pilgrimage for at least 15 years, she said, what she made of this. And she laughed. She said, for us, this march has nothing to do with religion. It is a way to welcome refugees into French history. How strange. Can you make the connection? These folks crossing, another border through Mexico? Refugees, migrants, that's all of us. That's our past. That's our history. Can we embrace the migrant, the immigrant of the present? Now, it seems, though, that Notre Dame might become a symbol precisely for the opposite. As Notre Dame was burning, layers of history seemed to evaporate. There was symbolism in the flames for today's France and for today's United States, fractured and divided by protests, thinly disguised Islamophobia and Guatemalaphobia, wringing our hands in France and in America about our collective identity. The fire forced President Emmanuel Macron to cancel his major speech on the protests, which had been billed as an attempt to heal the nation, a speech intended to stop Paris from, burning each weekend. Canceled because Paris found another way to burn. The symbolism for a troubled country, wrote the Times, was hard to miss. In 1882, there was a religious philosopher by the name of Ernest Renan who delivered a famous essay. And it says, "What is a nation?" He delivered this at a French university. He was faced at that time, in 1882, with a country that was reeling from violent disruptions of the Paris Commune. And he tried to bring France together in 1882. A nation, he argued, is based not on race, not on language, and not on religion. And he said, rather, a nation is a soul, a spiritual principle. For me, that begs a question. Who is France? Who are we as a nation? But who are we really as individuals on this Easter day? Who are we as a community of faith? What is our soul? What is our spiritual principles? The soul, he argued, is made up of two parts. One is the past, and other is the present. And I believe that's the same it is with our souls, the past and the present. Nations require a collective will to live together, to get along together. But one thing that he pointed out that was really interesting is he said shared suffering rather than shared rejoicing seems to be the collective memory that we gather around. We gather around our suffering rather than our joy. Today we're hopefully gathering around joy. It seems that we get so much out of sharing our sufferings and our struggles and all the negative stuff of life rather than the joys and the successes of life. So take a moment, turn to the person next to you, and share with them a joy from this past week. Did everybody get to share a joy? I hope you didn't share any suffering. So you may be saying right now, how does this apply to Easter? James, get on with it. Talk about America. Don't talk about France. Don't talk about the burning of Notre Dame. Well, we just completed our Easter journey and our Lenten journey which preceded it, which culminated with the death of Jesus, the suffering, the denial, the pain. It was where the followers of Jesus were stuck. As you heard the beautiful Easter story read, they were stuck in this place of misery and pain because their hopes and their dreams had been burned to the ground. At least they were together in their shared suffering, right? Because we enjoy our suffering more than our joy. And as I watched the flames engulf Notre Dame, I wondered if this destruction could be an occasion for shared suffering. And it might actually change the narrative. You know, there was another kind of suffering and burning that was happening this past month. Probably few of us know about it. It's gone unnoticed. It's the story of not just one church that was burning, but 3 churches. Anybody know the story? Louisiana. The burnings began at the end of March through the beginning of April. 3 historically black churches, all Baptist churches, were burned in St. Landry Parish in Louisiana in 14 days. The son of sheriff deputy is the chief suspect in the black church arsons. Now, I don't know what this young man's motive was. I don't know what was in his heart, Louisiana Governor John Bell Edwards said at the news conference this past Thursday, but I can say it cannot be justified or rationalized. These are evil acts. Well, I would venture to say it was certainly a hate crime. Well, this story was kind of buried. It didn't get a lot of press until Monday. Until Monday, when we heard the story of the burning of Notre Dame. And so finally, there's been 1.8 million in donations to rebuild these 3 historic black churches. Oh, compared to way over $1 billion for Notre Dame. But it does beg the question, who and what is most important? Selma Hayek's husband, Francois, donated $113 million alone to rebuild Notre Dame. Hillary said, of course, as we hold Paris in our hearts today, let us also send some love to our neighbors in Louisiana. So again, what does this have to do with Easter? What do we hold in our hearts? What do you hold in your heart on this Easter Sunday in 2019? One of my favorite post-Easter appearances of Jesus to his disciples was found in Luke 24. The characters Cleophas and a completely unnamed disciple. They're not 2 of the 12. These are really obscure disciples. And I love this story. It's called The Road to Emmaus. The story begins with 2 dejected, disappointed, and discouraged people walking home. They're probably dragging their feet. Their hopes have been dashed. A promising future was shattered into tiny bits with no possibility of putting it all back together again. Maybe they didn't want to leave their friends in Jerusalem and go back to Emmaus. But hey, life goes on. They heard Jesus was alive. They heard he had come back. He had made these bizarre and very short appearances, but they really didn't have any tangible evidence for the resurrection of Jesus. Just an appearance here and there seemed maybe to be a hoax or just wishful thinking. The joy and purpose and hope had been literally sucked out of everything for these 2 walking the road. Jesus, the one they had hoped in, he was dead. And it appears somebody had actually opened his tomb and taken his body. But at the end of the story, they're bouncing and chattering all over the place at the top of their lungs. Their excitement. They can't wait to get back to their friends soon enough. They're bubbling with joy and laughter because what happened to them? Jesus, it appears, appeared to them as they were walking in silent despondency. Jesus was walking with them back to Emmaus for miles before they finally recognized who he was. It seems that the truth of Jesus being alive was really before their eyes as they journeyed and walking with them, and the rumors were true. And suddenly they felt alive again. And this is the culmination of the story, which is my absolute favorite part of the Easter story. They suddenly felt alive and they said, "Did not our hearts burn within us?" Oh, Notre Dame is burning. Paris is burning. Rome is burning. Phoenix will be burning soon as we top 100 and some degrees. Our culture and our politics are burning out of control. Racism, homophobism, misogyny, Islamophobia, they are burning red hot around us. But my question for you is still, what is burning in your heart? And is your heart burning? When you hear the Easter story, does it burn? Is it a phoenix rising for you? In a community of believers who lost hope, now they have red-hot hope. One of my most despised professors in seminary, he taught systematized doctrine. It's called systematics. My roommate asked me what that was, and I said, I really can't tell you. because it wouldn't matter anyway. So he is the only one who gave me a D with all of my straight A's. His name was Dr. Klon. And he said this to the class one day as we were studying Christology. He said, "Gentlemen," because it was only gentlemen in the class, "if the story of Jesus does not titillate you, please leave my class." He said it with a much deeper, booming voice. After all, I think he was 80 years old. Those words, honestly, were well-deserved. I was in my last year of seminary. It was so academic. I knew Jesus in my head. I could articulate Luther's works and German theologians ad nauseum. I had practically memorized the Book of Concord and Pieper's Book of Systematics. But my relationship with God and my relationship with Jesus was as cold as ice. Jesus no longer titillated me because I was stuck right here. Jesus had become this strangely sterile figure who needed to be picked apart and not a person to follow. Not a message that was burning within, but a message that was actually freezing out my joy and probably freezing out the joy of those around me. And I recognized the longest journey you will make in your life is from your head to your heart. I was on the journey, I was on the Emmaus Road, but I'd lost my way just like those disciples. On the road to Emmaus, I had lost my hope and my joy, the feeling that God and Jesus could really make a difference in my life, and my heart was no longer burning, but surrounded by ice. Notre Dame, it's burning. Paris may be burning. Rome may be burning. Phoenix may be burning. Our culture and our politics may be burning, but at least we have a resurrected Jesus whose heart is burning with love and justice. You see, my friends, we don't just belong to France or Mexico or the United States or Guatemala or Honduras or El Salvador. We've got something a lot bigger here today on Easter. We've got a lot bigger nation, a lot bigger country, a huge community, a global family. We are the nation of God and Allah and the God of many names, the God of many, many names who calls us back to our souls and out of our heads and into our hearts to live a Christ-like life. So I ask you again, is your heart burning? Today, my friends, does the story of Jesus titillate you? Does it? Does it? Starting to. Lori, does the story of Jesus titillate you? Starting to. Well, I would say feel the burn, love the burn, embrace the burn. I pray that this Easter, because as I was ruminating with this and I woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning to take a couple of Advil, I said to myself, what is going to be unique this Easter? What is going to be different? I've been through so many of these Easters now. When will Easter come alive? When will Easter burn? The world is burning around us, folks. We are the ones who are to burn with love and justice and compassion and equity. I did some Googling for Lent to kind of come up with some Lenten ideas. Pastors like to do that. And yesterday, as I was prepping for this message and I was sweating late into the evening, I remembered Reverend Nadia Bolz-Weber, this good, out-of-the-box Lutheran, and a sermon title she had for Ash Wednesday. This is what her sermon title was: The Crap We Give Our Hearts To. Now, if I get a few more tattoos and I grow my hair a little longer, I might start looking like her. And I would love to, because she's fantastic and she says it like it is. But she asked the question in this sermon. She says, I wonder why God says to return to God with all our heart rather than to return to God when we let go of our crap. I mean, in Lent, we tend to focus really on our behavior, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if God says, return to me with all your heart, I think maybe the implication is that we give our hearts to a whole lot of things that are not God. Like we give our hearts to a whole lot of crap. She uses offensive language, yes, even on Sundays. She says like a whole lot of effing crap. I don't think that my problem is that I eat too much sugar or too much chocolate or I spend too much time on Facebook, which I really don't do. My problem, and maybe your problem too, if there is a challenge and a problem with us, is that I sort of piece my heart out to things that cannot love me back. We piece our hearts out to unrequited love, of so many false promises and self-indulgences, and the toxicity of it all makes us feel like our hearts sometimes, little pieces of our heart are in formaldehyde, being preserved. And sometimes by the time I get back to God, I've made lovers of so many things, so many ideas, so many hopes, and so many doubts. I've given myself so completely over to them that there's little of my heart left. So little to be fed by God's goodness, since my starving little heart is doled out in so many pieces trying to get its needs met. So today I say again, feel the burn. Feel the burn of new life. Don't let your heart get stuck in formaldehyde. We gather the pieces of our hearts given to so many useless things, unnecessary things, and begin to feel the burn again. That, my friends, is the whole challenge of the Easter season. It's really to become wholehearted and to become burning with the Spirit of God. I don't want to pass this Easter without a change in my heart, and I really hope you don't pass this Easter without a change in your heart. To give our hearts, our desires, our whole selves over to the burn of the divine, so we too can experience our hearts aflame with Spirit. Mother Teresa says this: a joyful heart is the inevitable result of a heart burning with love. So, as Notre Dame is in embers, as Paris is burning, as America is burning, as it seems that our culture and our society is burning and we are losing so much of justice, I would say, feel the burn. I would say, love the burn. Embrace the burn. And ask yourself, is that burn in my heart? Is that burn in my body? Is that burn bringing me joy and peace and hope and justice and equity? And I would say, just don't feel the burn. I would say, y'all go be the burn. Be the burn. Amen.